maybe we can start with the grace. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us now and forevermore. Amen. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to have this session. This is about what is currently in Kenya, what is happening in our country, and in different parts also of the world. But largely, we will focus on Kenya. We are talking about freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of association, and I don't know, freedoms and rights. I don't know what the difference may be and what are the limitations. And that becomes our point of discussion today. And we are blessed to have one of our young brothers, that is Benson. Benson is a very prolific uh, law researcher. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and is very vast with these matters to do with rights, constitutional issues, and is a known commentator across Africa. Lots of people follow to hear what he's saying on social media, on LinkedIn specifically. He writes a lot about things to do with law, and many people keep looking for him to seek his view on such matters. And so we are pleased to have him today and share with us on this very important topic. And so I want to welcome you, Ben, to share with us what you have in store.
Maybe just to help you as well, it is not only in the Bible where we have the issue of where two or more people are gathered. In Kenya, it is also part of our laws.
Uh-huh.
So we have a piece of legislation called the Public Order Act,
Uh-huh.
Chapter 6, laws of Kenya. So it defines two things. One, a public place and a public gathering. So what is a public gathering and what is a public place? So I mean a public meeting and a public place. So in that particular legislation, a gathering of 10 or more persons in any public place is treated as, let me distinguish the two. I have to get you that because it's interesting when you mentioned the issue of two and two or more.
Do you think a platform like this qualifies as a public place, and therefore also public gathering? In
Yes,
that
this is
respect, was it they say, was it contemplated?
oh, the issue of online now, the fact that we are now online.
Yes.
No, in this legislation, there was no contemplation of that, because if you look at what the law was trying to deal with, it was trying to deal with the people who are there to disturb the peace. Peace here was seen or viewed in the sense of just disruptions and all that, the physical serenity where people are. So I think nobody envisioned the issues to do with Zoom. And ideally, you are at your place, I'm at my place. Even if you were to cause any disruptions, it
Yeah.
may only be on Zoom and Twitter and all that. So
Yeah, because I'm foreseeing a situation where in the next general elections, most of the largest campaigns will be virtual. Yeah, that will attract millions. Maybe they will start thinking of how to curtail that also, so that they seek license from whoever. I also saw something going round about, was it a proposal or something, that in order to have a gathering or a demonstration now, You need to
Mm.
submit lots of other things alongside what was known before, which routes. Uh, 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 I don't know. There was another list that I saw. I don't know how authentic it was. And how
Yeah,
did that?
really, the idea is, and actually that's one of the things we want to discuss here, the short time that we have. The idea is that we have peace and we have peace. Then we have pieces. I'll tell you what those mean in this context. We all have rights that have been established by God to those who believe in God. Then we have those that have been established in books to those who believe in books. And there are people who believe that whatever courts have said is the law. So those things exist. At the end of the day, there must be some goalposts. Just like in football, in netball, we are playing. The field is very wide, but if you want to score, then it will not be a score unless that particular whatever ball enters within a particular space. So the purpose of the law in any context, whether in business, whether in politics, is to define that space within which you have to score for you to think that you have actually outshined anybody. So that is true in any context, in my view. Um, I know you gave me about 30 minutes to deliver my presentation. And in light of the activities going on in the country today, I was wondering what exactly should I come here and share with people, and what would be relevant in this context. So I actually tried to summarize some of the uh, speeches, some of the theories, some of the quotes that we've had over time on the issues around freedom, protests, and liberation. So I would want to just give at least 5 of those paraphrased summaries so that would provide the context of this discussion. It has been said, and the reason why I said I've paraphrased is that some of them is a summation of what many people said. If those thoughts aligned, I have summarized them. So it has been said that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. The second thing that I really like hearing is that a right is not what someone gives you. It is what no one can take away from you. A right is not what someone gives you. It is what no one can take from you. And that is what a right is. Then the third thing I would say is that there are people who are now saying this is now a modern philosophers or theorists or attitudes saying that the duty of a youth today is to challenge corruption. So actually, that quote is coming from the understanding or view that 90% of the problems we have today can be traced down to corruption. Just because we have wrong people at the right places, or we have right people with the wrong attitude, then we have corruption. So then the duty of every young person is to challenge that corruption. Then uh, the fourth summary I would say is that there's the contention that democracy is not the absence of dissent, but the guarantee that dissent is protected. Democracy is not the absence of dissent, but the guarantee that dissent is protected. Then the fifth is that the true test of a free society is how it treats those who disagree with it. And I would repeat, the true test for a free society is how it treats those who disagree with it. Then somebody summarized and said, okay, what is common in all these is that people will always agree, and sometimes people may disagree. So, what shows that people are free is whether your disagreement is condoned or appreciated. And to appreciate does not really mean that you have to agree with it, but there has to be some bit or element of appreciation. And that is what some of these theorists and thought leaders said before us. So I was invited, and I'm told that perhaps the audience here would be largely a youthful population of the country, and who would want to hear more about the limits of police brutality and the rights of protest, people who are protesting within the Constitution. I'm not here to lecture on the law. You people watch your TVs every day. There are those radio. There are people there with the Constitution who even read them there. I would not do that here. But what I would say is that yes, our Constitution establishes what we call surrender of power. Permit me to be a theorist for 30 seconds. And I would say that every person as a person has the right to do everything they wish to do at any time, in any way they believe. But because there are more than two people and there are more than 3, 4, 5, there arises the necessity to limit what we can do and what we cannot do. So people have to agree. Theorists in the legal fraternity called that what we call a social contract, that people must come together and agree how are we going to do things. So in our country, for example, we are a constitutional democracy, meaning that we are a country that has agreed that we have to define some of the minimums that is going to guide us in everything that we do. So then that is why people celebrate the opening in our constitution that says we the people. So we the people, it is all of us. Actually, it's all of us. So that is why we have to bring all our money together. We have to bring everything together so that the budget is conducted or done at a particular centralized place. So that from there, everybody buys milk, everybody fuels their vehicle. If we were not there, then it means we were we would go back to what, again, in the legal fraternity has been defined as the state of nature. The state of nature is like the jungle, the forest. The cow sleeps wherever they feel like they want to sleep. They pee wherever they want. They mow when they want, and all that. So that's what human beings, according to those theories, so it wise to deal with and say they're not going to do things in that brutish way. So let's have at least some sense of organization. So that's where all these things come in. So that at the end of the day, everybody will feel entitled. And that's where the issue of freedom comes in. That I feel entitled to own a vehicle just as much as you feel. I feel entitled to speak up just as much as you feel. So that system then allows people to donate that particular power so that we entrust a certain number of people to lead us, and we define how we want to be led and how we would not want to be led. So the issues arise now. What happens when um, whatever agreement you had has been breached by the people you were entrusted with that power to lead and to guide and implement that particular agreement? And that's where issues to do with dissatisfaction with how somebody is governing, dissatisfaction with how somebody is implementing that particular contract becomes a problem. So the Constitution enshrines some of the ways through which you can call those people to order. When you think somebody is now going against what you had agreed, what do you do? Then there is how to do it. So we have issues to do with the recalling those people you have elected. Ideally, the constitution tried to make sense is by saying that at least let's have a period, a defined period. In Kenya, some people say it is 4 years, some people say it is 5 years, that we need to hold elections after 5 years. Some people interpret it as 4 years. But that was the formula that was used, and they're saying if you don't perform per the terms of the contract that we have given you to govern, then it means we are not going to give you time to go back. Then people thought, okay, I don't think that's enough. We need to have a way of even recalling this book before the end of those 5 or 4 years. Then we have those all those procedures. Besides that, people still see that there are certain things that we may not actually need to wait to go through all that recall process. We need to show you that, look, we are dissatisfied. And that is where then now the Constitution provides for the right to petition those in authority protest, assemble, be together, and it presupposes that two or more persons can at a given time feel dissatisfied with the authority. Okay, so that is when issues to do with gathering now come in. So then we have a piece of legislation called the Public Order Act, which now governs how people should assemble and how people should not assemble. So Article 37 of the Constitution of Kenya provides for the rights to protest and to demonstrate, whether alone, as a person, or in a group of people. It doesn't matter how many people you are, whether as companies or as individuals, you are entitled to demonstrate. And what are you demonstrating? What I think many people are not giving thoughts to is, what do you mean demonstrate? When you say right to peaceably demonstrate. So people have, demonstration has not been defined. To demonstrate, basic English say to demonstrate is somehow to show, to illustrate. Okay? So how to illustrate has never been defined. So some people will go there, show up riding in horses, on horses. Some people will show there with tuk-tuks. Some people will show there dancing. So it has not been defined, and how to demonstrate and what to demonstrate. So because issues to be demonstrated will arise as and when they arise. So that is one of the things I like about the right to demonstrate, because how I'm coming up, how I'm coming to show up then is not uh, defined. I can see somebody saying, even if you choose to show up with a tea in a flask, that's okay. The other day I saw people showed up with plastic chairs and they were just sitting. I mean, it is demonstration. What you're demonstrating is up to you. Now, that is where now issues now start arising. We don't know what demonstration. Okay, we know at least there is a dissatisfaction and somebody will leave their comfort or wherever they are to come to the public to start demonstrating. And public means you are two or more people, and I mean two or more people, and you are gathered, at least in this context, with the common purpose of demonstrating. So what you're demonstrating and the fashion is up to you, in my view. It has not been defined in law. So in the Constitution, everybody, I began by saying that everybody is entitled to what they think is right, and what people agreed was at least the minimum good for everybody. So you may be dissatisfied, but I am not dissatisfied. You may be happy, but I am unhappy. So there is a divergence now. How did the Constitution deal with that? It says that actually some rights can be limited. So we have Article 24 of the Constitution. It says some rights can be limited. Limitation of right means that we do not deny that you are entitled to say anything you want to say. We do not deny that you are entitled to the right to demonstrate. We do not deny that you surrendered your right just like I did. But you must recognize that it is not all the time that people are going to agree with you. So there are the limitation of rights under Article 24 of the Constitution, but that particular limitation has parameters that must be met. Number one, limitation of rights must be justified. It must be justifiable limitation. And maybe to use a buzzword, your right as a person ends where it starts to affect another person's right negatively and without justification. That's when your right ends. So you are entitled to talk, but when your speech is going to interfere with somebody else's right, whichever right it is, then you stop there. So exercise your rights within the boundaries of that particular space. So that is the first issue. Again, under Article 24, that particular limitation must be codified in law. So nobody just wakes up any day and say, no, this one is limited, this one is not allowed. No, whatever is limited must be limited in law so that we can read and say, this is why it is limited. For example, police officers cannot demonstrate. They are not allowed to demonstrate even if they are dissatisfied. So that is expressly limited. So you cannot, as a police officer or as a Kenya Army officer, go out there and start demonstrating. Whether you are demonstrating in peace or what, that is not allowed. So that is how limitation of rights come in. The main thing that somebody should take away from this is that that particular limitation must be justifiable, and that justification must be established in law. Actually, if you people are readers, you will see that every piece of legislation, when it is presented as a bill, there must be a limitation of rights clause. And you must say that this particular piece of legislation or proposal does not limit the rights, any rights under the Constitution or any other written law. And if it limits, you have to go ahead and justify why that right is limited and to what extent. So again, that would almost take me to a point that I've always wanted to hammer, that at least let the youth, let young people try to be reading the pieces of legislation, the legislative proposal. The mode of drafting that is currently being used in Kenya is one of plain English, where as long as you are able to understand, read and understand English, you can understand what's going on. What is important is the for formulation of those particular legislations, because once they are passed into law, like I'm telling you now, that every piece of legislation must have a limitation of rights clause. And if that right is expressly limited, it doesn't matter what you do, because then that particular right could have been limited. So when you know, or when you try and understand the legislative process, when pieces of legislation are presented as proposals, you're able to comment and say, no, we don't agree, we don't consent. But when that goes without your attention and knowledge, then we sometimes will be told, oh, it's too late. Again, the whole idea of justification, it must be justifiable. The purpose for limiting a particular right must be justifiable. That's why you may find particular piece of legislation declared as unconstitutional by a statute. And again, remember, the role of parliament is to legislate. So parliament will legislate anything that they would want, because one of the things they have noted is that people largely have do not have a culture of reading. And that's why somebody was mocking us the other day saying all the stores were looted, property destroyed, but nobody robbed, stormed to steal any book from the stores. That was very funny. So, and again, another person said sometime that if you want to hide anything from an African, then put it in writing and hide it in a book. That has made sense, and that has been used severally in some of the legislations, because people largely have had that negative attitude towards following up what's going on. So at this juncture, I would say the point here is that let's stay awake. Let's always try to follow up on those issues of legislation and be active in the legislative processes. As an organization, Linda Vijana, I know you people engage a lot with the youth. Those are some of the things you need to see how to help the youth follow up on these processes, not just at the national level. Right now, power is decentralized. We have bills going on in the counties, and those are the day-to-day activities and lives of everybody in those particular regions. So let us be active. Now, I was explaining the issue of limitation of rights, which I have said. So now, in the context of protests, you have said, I don't like the finance bill. I don't like this particular law. I don't like this and that, and I'm going to demonstrate. You are 100 people who think that way. There are 70 others who do not think that way, or just 3 who do not think that way. The law says that we must protect both. And that is when the issues to do with how the law must now define for you, how are you going to protest and make sure that you are actually enjoying your right to do so. And the other person who is not thinking the way you do is also enjoying their own rights. So the state then has obligations in that regard. And those obligations are 3, if I can summarize. And the first obligation is to respect that particular right to demonstrate. The second obligation is to protect you as we demonstrate. And the third, which is the most interesting obligation, is to facilitate the demonstration. I will discuss them in passing. To respect simply means that we are not going to interfere with any person who demonstrates within the law. That is what the Constitution presupposes and the legislation presupposes. Then, in doing so, you have to protect those who are going to protest. Like I said, we have 100 people who are saying we are going to protest, 70 saying we don't want any protest. So it is actually the role of the police to protect those who think that they want to protest. That is where the aspect of protection come in, so that everybody is given opportunity to enjoy the right. Then the third is to facilitate. To facilitate simply means that you can access wherever you said you are going to use as you demonstrate. You are able to be very safe and you are able to actually assemble. And it's very interesting. One of the issues that we dealt with in the Constitution is that we are now entrenching the issues to do with PWDs, people living with disabilities. Just because I don't have one limb does not mean that I should not go and demonstrate and picket and show that actually I'm dissatisfied. So part of what the law presupposes is that the police and the state, I would say the state and its machinery, which machine here is the police. Now, the police is expected then to guard you and protect you and even clear for you the road. If you are people with wheelchairs, you should be able to protest, and it is actually the police pushing you to show that you are in disagreement with whatever it is that you want to show. Then, what then are the responsibilities of the police in that context? And I would give these answers in terms of what we have seen in the present, recent activities. Number one, the main issue is the unnecessary dispersals. You have just shown up, you are beginning to protest, then you have been dispersed. So where do you go and why do you go back? So when it becomes annoying, then that is where the issues begin. And there will now be that back and forth against the civilians and the police. So if the police will unnecessarily disperse people, then they are breaching, of course, the first responsibility. The second responsibility is that when need arises to use force, which sometimes we have seen will be there. Somebody is out of order, and according to the police and the standing orders, this one should be corrected. Then the law says that particular thing must be lawful, where lawful means that it is written that this is unlawful. So lawful or lawfulness or unlawfulness of any activity must be traced to a legislation or a regulation in writing that says that this is unlawful. Because actually, for there to be any law, it is assumed and it is true that the law must be taken through public participation. So that is where people consent to that particular law. So if you are breaching that law, then the police have responsibility to ask you not to do it. So in terms of using force, there are three things that the police is expected to do. Number one is to make sure that that force is lawful, meaning it is allowed. Number two, that that force is necessary. So if, for example, you have just how do we say, you have winked, and that annoys the police, is that enough for the police to shoot you? So it must be the issue of necessity. You have to show that it was actually necessary for me as a police officer to do this. So if, for example, somebody is winking and a police officer slaps you, it will be different from when a police officer shoots you or hits you with those rungus that they carry. And that is tied to the third limb, which is the issue of proportionate use of force. So that force must be proportionate. If somebody comes with their bare hand, there's no need and no basis to use a panga, or like we are seeing in Kenya, using a bullet and more than one bullet. Some people were swallowing over 10 bullets, and that was very bad. So those are the things I needed to clarify on the issue of police responsibility. The aspect of unnecessary dispersals, which to me is the major cause of those fracas. Otherwise, if people are allowed to just move peacefully, then rarely will there be issues to do with those fights. Unless, of course, there are those rowdy people who will just want to cause chaos. And that's why the law then allows for the police to deal with them forcefully. But that force must meet the three things I've mentioned, which is must be lawful, must be proportionate, and must be absolutely necessary. Another thing I wanted to mention was the issue of the legal infrastructure that now deals with the protests and the right to assemble in Kenya. Again, I will paraphrase. I said I'm not providing any lecture. Now, Article 37, which I've discussed, of the Constitution of Kenya, it does not suggest the right to protest. It protects it. It guarantees it. It says you are entitled. It does not suggest that, oh, you actually, do you know you may? No, you have that particular right. So that is something that must sink in. Every police officer, the state must know that that right is established and there was a basis for the establishment of that right. Number two, the Constitution is not a mere guideline. The Constitution is not a mere guideline. It is the supreme law in Kenya, such that any law that is going to be created that is inconsistent with that particular Constitution stands inconsistent from that particular day until the day it is declared unconstitutional, and whatever is done under that particular legislation is a bad thing according to the Constitution. So if we discard that particular Constitution when it is inconvenient, or when then it means we no longer have a country, because that's what we are seeing in most of the instances in Kenya today, where we try to use the Constitution when it is convenient. Somebody wants to formulate a budget, they use the Constitution. They reach a particular point when they think the Constitution is not giving way, they resort to other means. That is not allowed. And that is, to me, one of the avenues leading to the issues that are endless now in Kenya. Another thing that I'm liking with Kenya is that people are now more awake. And I think it's coming as a result of this 100% transition that we saw, and the free right to free education in Kenya. People are now read. People have gone to school. People can read and write, and it is very difficult to get away with many things. The population that is elite is so high, and they're able to know the minimum. And one of the good things with our constitution is that it is drafted in plain English. As long as you are able to read and understand the English, you will be able to know what is right and what is wrong and what is the minimum. The third thing I would want to mention is that the law may punish disorder, yes, but it must never silence lawful dissent, because that is the whole foundation of democracy. The whole idea of democracy is that we are going to hear you even when you don't agree with us, and we are going to respect that, and you are going to stay happy and see that you can actually influence some of the activities in a country. Now, on the police conduct and accountability, again, in summary, I would say that, of course, there was this guy, I think it was Lord Acton, who said that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I will repeat that. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We've had very many people saying, "Oh, you're drunk." I mean, how would I say? I don't know how they put it. Umekunywa power, something like that. So ukikunywa power, then that power corrupts you absolutely. The second thing I would mention in that regard is that if, and I'm trying to adapt this from commentaries that have been made on human rights, ideologies, and all that. The police are supposed to protect protesters, not to provoke and punish them. And that one, I say it in the context of what we are seeing. You see that some of these things arise as a result of provocation from each side. It is the protest. Sometimes the people protesting go, they are provoking the police. Sometimes it is the police provoking the protests or the protesters and all that. So in my summary, I would put it that the police are supposed to protect those who are protesting, but not to provoke or punish them. There's no punishment for protest. As long as you're playing within the parameters that are set in law, then you should be allowed to protest. And I would mention two more things under that line, that the badge that the police wear, and I hope there's just one police here or two, or someone will one day listen to this. I want to say that the badge the police wear does not come with a license to violate the Constitution. It does not come with a license to violate the Constitution. And it is tied to the concept of command responsibility, where every police officer, as a person, as an officer, you are entitled to know what is right and know what is wrong. You are allowed to take orders from your superiors. You are allowed to give orders depending on your position. But whatever you do as a person must be lawful. So, like, it was very unfortunate, for example, when we hear somebody saying, "Oh, I killed this particular person because I was told to kill." There's nothing like that in law. Or somebody is giving you orders to kill. There's nothing like that in law. So that particular badge that you wear as a police officer or as a president, whoever you are, it does not come. It is not a license to kill. You are given those guns not because you are the only person who can have a gun, but to protect people. People surrendered their ability and their urge to have those guns and entrusted you, so that we don't need to have everybody carrying their own guns as they walk around. So I need to mention just three more things. I'd appreciate questions more than speaking. So I'll take 2.5 more minutes to conclude on one thing, then I'll open the floor for questions. Wanted to mention something about um, I wanted to mention something about what I've, in my view and in my study, what I view to be the accountability gaps in all these demonstrations and the role of the police and the role of the government. So we do not see investigations or sanctions that are being meted against the people who commit these things. We do not see serious and thorough, conclusive investigations and what they result into. Number two, police officers, like I said, they act with impunity. They feel that they are covered under some umbrella and really nothing happened. And people have begun and have always criticized IPOA, for example, saying, "You do not help us. You do not help in any way. You are just another conduit. And you're an institution that is used to actually suppress accountability." Then the most embarrassing is the denial by top government officials. You have the officials saying, "Oh, there were no deaths," and there are people who died. What does that mean? Number one, it makes it very impossible for even investigations to go on, because it is suppressing that particular attitude and suppresses all the forces, because most of the people who are actually saying this are the people who must give command and must okay even those investigations. So I think, Paul, I would stop there, and maybe end with just 4 more quotes again, paraphrasing from commentaries, from ideologies that have been said out there on human rights and the most vulnerable. And I said three things. I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So even those who feel like, yeah, demonstration is nonsense and all that, it's okay. it's nonsense until it will catch up with you one day. So injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The second thing I would mention is that I have seen in Kenya, for example, where children are tear gassed in schools just because they are demonstrating or protesting. Then we must ask, what are we preparing them for? What kind of future are we preparing these children for? The third thing I would mention is that you measure the strength of a society by how it protects the weakest. You measure the strength of the society by how it protects the weakest. I think this was Desmond Tutu who spoke and said something along those lines. So the long and short of what I wanted to say is that whether demonstrations are good or bad is not a debate, because it is like the right to life. Whether you like whoever is living or whoever is living does not like you, that one is up to you. The right to protest is given, and every person has that particular right. However, in exercising that right, you must do it within the bounds of the law. Right now, and I mentioned this is why I mentioned it first, that we must be awake and follow the legislative processes, so that when a piece of legislation, for example, right now, I am aware that there are discussions going around that a bill is now being processed to define how protests should be conducted, that we need zones for protests and all that. That particular legislation cannot pass if you do not okay it. So if you have issues to do with the issues against some of those proposals, the right time is to participate during the public participation and show that you agree or disagree, or actually influence by giving your opinion, and that particular opinion will guide the overall or ultimate outcome of the legislation. Paul, I would end it there. Back to you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would love to listen more and more. Now, I love how you started. Like uh, there is no defined way of demonstrating. People can demonstrate in whichever way. Towards the end, you've also mentioned something now to do with children, and that reminded me that we also had a situation where we've had situations where literature is used. I don't know whether we would call that demonstration. You remember the Echoes of War, a play taken to the stage. Is that demonstration? Is it protected? Is it right for the government to curtail certain literature? That this one is, we do not want, this one is now censored and things like that. What is your thought on that? And then there is also the issue of insult. You talked about your limit, your freedom should not interfere with somebody else's freedom. I don't know whether insult, because that is what I hear more, including the social media, calling people all the names and even shouting. I don't know whether that is also uh, limiting somebody's right. I love the fact that you said that the police should facilitate. Yes, I read it in some. No, I think I read it last week or something when they were talking about the 25th, when 25th was coming, that they will actually facilitate. I was wondering what that actually means, but I'm wondering why uh, they did not allow, or they do not allow people to access certain places, while, as you are explaining, they should actually facilitate you accessing, whether it's state house or parliament or whatever.
Mm,
What
mm,
are your
mm,
thoughts? Thanks.
mm, mm. Uh, thank you for the question. I don't know whether Catherine.
Can I add mine and then you proceed to answer all?
Okay, okay.
There's that section of Section 5 of the Public Act, where it requires Public Order Act, where it requires advance notice when informing the police and all that you have in your demonstration. So I think it's 3 days in advance. But with the current situation we have in Kenya, it's not safe to give a whole 3-day notice, because you see they bring the goons before the day comes. So would it be legit still to maybe give it the final day if your demonstration is tomorrow? Thank you.
I think let me start with your question as I go to Paul's. Well, the whole idea of giving notice is for the police to be able to facilitate that particular activity that you want to do. A demonstration is an activity. It is a physical activity, Paul, and this one answers your question whether making noise on Twitter is demonstration. The law presupposes physical activities, so that you are going to interfere with physical activities of other people. So demonstration really is an activity that has to be facilitated, and the law presupposes that you need, of course, like I said, in that facilitation, it would include, for example, you tell us, this is who we are. We are a group of people with disabilities. Okay, what's the nature of your group? Some of us have no eyes, some of us have no legs, some of us do not hear. So they must be, and you've defined the road you want to use. The police must be able to protect you and control even the traffic and say, if you hoot here, these people have hearing problems, they will not hear you. So the police must be there to control traffic, to enable you do whatever you are doing. If you are people with no legs, they will be there to help you. That is what the law says. They will be there to help you to do whatever you wanted to do. So the purpose of notice is, of course, to give the opportunity to the police to be able to prepare adequately, not to come and beat you up. The funny part of it is that in Kenya, you give them that notice, then perhaps they are saying, how many rungus do we need and how many cans of that pink water do we need? That's the funny bit of it. Otherwise, what the idea is that you actually have to define, this is what we do, this is the number. Okay, when I was in campus, we could call for demonstrations. And what you do is you define, this is what we want to do. We want to protest from 8 a.m. to this particular time. We think how 100 students will be there. So then you know. And like I said, and this is what I like most in Kenya today, because it is interesting. I like it because it is interesting. Whether I agree with it, whether it is true or false is another thing. But the idea that you're saying, nyinyi mnataka kuandamana, sisi hatutaki, so mkikuja, sisi pia tunakuja. That is a very, in my view, very legal. That's a very legal position, because somebody is saying you are unhappy with the government. Another person is saying, I'm happy with the government. So you are coming to interfere with my government or the government that I love. I'm also coming to interfere with you. And that is what the law presupposes. So then it comes up with the fact that you should actually be guarded by the police. So the role of the police is to guard you, because the first particular thing is that the first thing that comes to mind is that you could go there, yet somebody is unhappy with your protest. But the state should always be happy with your protest. So that is how I would answer the question. I don't know whether that answers you, Catherine.
I think it does.
Yes,
Let's
it does.
move on
Thank you.
because of time.
That notice is very important. And again, it also has to something to do with the logistics. For us to be able to guard you as the police, how many officers do we need? We have a system where we have different officers elsewhere. You've heard the government saying we had to call people from Western because there's a demonstration in Nairobi. So if you didn't give government notice, then you are out there demonstrating, then it means they would not be able to contain or even help you. So the unfortunate bit of it, like I said, is that it appears that instead of the police coming to protect, govern, and respect your right to demonstrate peacefully, they actually come to kill, maim, and interfere with your particular right. Now, Paul, when you asked that why don't people be allowed, why can't people be allowed to go to State House? They have said that's where they want to go. A nice question, because part of the reasons why you need to give notice is for them to prepare and tell you whether, number one, that is a protected area or not. We have what we call protected areas. For example, Those areas include where the police, I mean, not police, yes, even the police stations, that's a protected area. The army barracks, those are protected areas. The state house is a protected area. So those are under the law. Those are areas you cannot just go and occupy as you wish. Why that is the case? Do not ask me. I said the first port of call is when the law was being passed. It is assumed that you agreed that that is the order you wanted in the country. So if you did not want that, you needed to defeat that particular law from passing. So let us be vigilant when every law is being passed. Now, you will ask me that it has happened elsewhere, it has happened in other countries. We've seen parliament being occupied, the state house being occupied. Yes, it is possible when people are mad and when that order cannot stand. So, of course, that comes with very many things, which is not the subject of today's discussion. But revolutions do occur. But I dare say that it is until you organize very well, not these kind of things I see in Kenya. I don't think they are revolutionary enough to, and these are my very honest opinion, because when you start saying we are leaderless, we are formless, we are nameless, it beats logic in terms of command and being able to do anything, in my view, my very honest opinion. And that's an area where we need to do better. We are trying. I hope one day, and we here means those people you have defined as young people. Don't know what young means. So yes, I think that answers your question. Unless there's a question I've not answered, Paul.
Yes, I talked about literature. I talked about age. You remember?
Oh yeah, literature. I think I had answered that because I told you when we're talking about protest, we're talking about the physical activity. Your question then bordered around issues to do with the freedom of expression. Our constitution protects that particular right to express yourself. To express yourself, you can express it through songs, through writing, whichever, and even more artistic work is actually protected, and that is something that borders the lines of arts. So that is a right that is protected under the constitution. You can do your literature in any way. Whether a right has been, I mean, the issue, for example, that we're talking about literature being suppressed and all that, that one you'll examine it based on the circumstances or, and the evidence you have at that time. Remember, when two people have different versions of whatever is going on, truth must be lying just somewhere. It takes some skill, it takes some training for somebody to be able to know where the truth is. So it's not about the magnitude of who has the masses on the media to say which side is right. When two sides of a story have emerged, then it requires some soberness in terms of trying to uncover the truth now. So, in short, to answer your question, um freedom of expression is guaranteed under the Constitution. Yes, it can be limited, but only when it is, for example, stepping now on other people's rights, which include propaganda for war. So, is it causing war in any way? You scan for that. And okay, let me not go there. Then the second thing is it maybe leaking out the security detail of a country or whatever? If it does not go into those arena, that then would be limited under Article 24 of the Constitution, which limitation I had said must be defined in law, not on the date when the writing is made. That law must have been existing before. That in law is called the principle of legality. So I would answer your question in that manner.
Just maybe one more about insult. Is there a law against insult? So and so insulted me, so you can sue somebody.
Yes, we have the law. Well, in fact, they are both criminal and civil bits of those people things to do with insult. Again, let me go back to the Constitution. Freedom of expression, which basically is the right to speak, the freedom of speech. I said your right stops when it begins interfering with another person's right. Okay? And in the same constitution, we have Article 28 speaking about the right to dignity. Nobody has ever defined dignity in any piece of legislation. But dignity, as understood, is that it is something to do with the reputation. We have problems understanding what dignity is, especially in the context of now enforcing the right to dignity, because it is not defined, especially in our constitution. But then, as understood from the judgments we read, something that is damaging somebody's reputation, something that is affecting the minimum rights, in my view, actually, ultimately, it affects your dignity as a person. So, for example, if you're abusing somebody, of course, you're exercising your freedom to say anything, but that anything you want to say, do not stop speaking when it now starts, for example, damaging my reputation. So when you damage my reputation, that right is limited, and then things to do with defamation now come in. In our country, up to recently, we had what we call criminal defamation and civil defamation, where somebody would sue you for criminal defamation. That legislation had been declared, provision had been declared unconstitutional, and I think there are still appeals pending. But then, when somebody defames you or injures your reputation, then your refuge is to go to the civil courts and seek for payment and say, I've been injured. Show us how you have been injured, and you can be given money. Again, you must have a reputation capable of being injured. If you don't have a reputation, for example, you would not get any payment. There are also several things. I mean, that's now a civil issue. Well, if you have a specific issue, somebody insulting you, please look for me. We'll deal with that. Otherwise, I'll veer off what we were discussing.
You must have a reputation worth being damaged.
Yes,
Maybe your reputation is already damaged.
yes,
Probably
you
like
may
the politician. So somebody is just confirming.
you may have none, okay? Because one of the defenses is that whatever I said is true. So if somebody is able to show you that whatever you think is an insult is actually truth, then that is a complete defense. You count your losses and go home. So there are many things. That's a civil issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have not seen any question in the chat, neither do I have anybody raising the hand. But I think we have a lot to learn in this. It means, therefore, when people do tweets and whatever on X platform, maybe some of those things would amount to some lawsuits, because they would be considered to be injuring reputation. And
Yes,
yet
yes, yes.
I see them going around all the while, and even politicians on the podiums, they're just puking stuff. And I keep wondering whether there is protection for that, even among themselves. Some of
For politicians, although I would say, like I said before, this one is now out of topic form. But for politicians, of course, we start by saying the test is a bit different. The test is higher. You have to show that this is not made within the general and normal context of politics and things like those. There's a demand letter I'll share with you, and a response, a reply to that demand letter. You remember when George Natembea demanded that he be paid by those who, according to him, defamed him during some burial, funeral, whatever, in Kakamega. Senator, no, Speaker Petangula's home. You remember something like that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so there was a very nice exchange that I'll share with you, and you'll get to know some of these things. Otherwise,
Thank you.
that's
Thank you.
a purely civil issue. It seems somebody insulted you. Please look for me on the side. the danger of advising people on civil matters on the media is that you don't know whether you are advising including your opponent. So you have no control. You have no control over who is going to listen to this.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Catherine, you can pass a vote of thanks and close for us.